If everyone would rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we've got a fairly busy agenda this evening. I had a couple of comments. First thing I want to do is thank everyone who's here for the panels to speak about the elementary grade school configuration. It's a nasty night out there. You've got better things to do, but this is really beneficial, I think, for the community and for the board to hear what you folks have to say, and that's going to be important to us as we make our decision. So thank you for coming this evening. A couple other things I wanted to comment on. One of our student board members, Noah Shreeden, there was a nice article in the Forecaster. Noah is currently serving on the State Board of Education. Congratulations to Noah. Another thing I wanted to mention, and I've never done this, and I'm remiss for not doing this, but I want to make a point of noting that each time we get our packets, we get extensive minutes from the previous meeting. And in this case, the State of the School presentation, this was really lengthy, detailed stuff. And I just want to thank Vita Ferris for the time she takes to put this stuff together and really give the attention to detail that our minutes require. It's a thankless job. I know when we form subcommittees, the one job nobody wants to do is take minutes. And I just want to thank Vita for all the time you must put into putting these together. So thank you, Vita. The last thing I want to mention is this will be the first reading of our proposed fiscal year 2017 budget. This is sort of the first meeting, the public portion of the budget process, although the public has been welcome to attend many of the meetings that the board has had with administration. I encourage the public, if you have opportunities to participate in the school budget, please come, please speak. If there are things that are important to you in the district, I would ask that you support those things early on in this process and not wait until it gets time for the public to vote on this. So, and lastly, I just want to thank, with regard to the budget, thank the current legislature for increasing the subsidy that the state municipalities receive this year. As you'll see when we go through the budget, that's had a big impact on what we do. So, all right. With that, I'll move on to item 4.0, approve and amend minutes of February 24th. You have those from your packet. Is there a motion on those minutes? Move to approve by Bill. Second by Alan. A minute to look those over. Comments, questions, changes on those? The only thing I would note is that call to order, it stated that I called the meeting to order at 6:04, and then after the State of the School presentation, I called the meeting to order at 6:04, and I know the State of the District speech was more than a minute long, so maybe we should change that to 7:04. Fine with that, Bill?
That is fine.
Okay. So there's a motion on the floor to approve the minutes with that one change. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, on to adjustments to the agenda. Item 1, I would like to move item 10.1, which is the elementary school grade configuration discussion. I'd like to move that up to 6.1, which would follow our public comment session. Is everyone in favor of that? The other thing I want to ask the board about is we have received some information regarding the acquisition of property for the high school the place is in. I didn't know if you folks were interested in having an executive session following this meeting. We'd like some time to digest that, and we can have a midday meeting sometime in the next week or so. Yeah, I think if we were to meet within a week, so we could either meet within the next week or we could have executive session at the end of this week. Any other thoughts? You fine with waiting? Noah? For some issues, we recommend that you not be present. For that issue, policies on the, I'd have to check with that. Usually with a personnel issue or student issue, we ask the students to not be present for executive session. With this one, it might be something we have to go back. All right, so I'm going to recommend then that we have another meeting. We'll have an executive session meeting, special board meeting, sometime later this week. It might be a midday thing. All right. Okay, on to item 6.0, public comment session. This is the first of two. If you have any comments regarding this agenda, I would open up the podium to the public. I just ask that you come up here, state your name, and try and keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on an item on this agenda? All right. So then we'll move on to item 6.1, which is the elementary school grade configuration discussion. And I will turn this over to Patrick.
So just to refresh everybody from the last meeting that we had a brief discussion about elementary grade configuration in math, meaning Dykeable and Fisher Mitchell schools, whether they should remain the same or whether they should go to a pre-K to 5 model. And this is a goal the board had this year. It's something we've talked about, I think, for the last couple of years, but have never come to any, I guess it's a consensus or vote on which way we would move. The board has information, research, maybe probably too much information at this point about the pros and cons of both grade structures. And so tonight, the next move was for the board to hear from support of our administrators as well as teaching staff. And so for the purpose of this evening, what we thought we'd have is a question and answer period for our staff people to weigh in, for the board to ask questions, and then anybody here from the public that would like to ask questions or just provide their opinion. That's what the board would like to hear about. So what I'll do is just introduce people because I know it's being taped and they might just be able to see the back of your head. So make sure that everybody knows who's in the room. So at this table, as we said, that administrator, well, most administrators here, but we have Dave Richards, our facilities director. And again, Dave has done some work that he's given to the board about what we have to do in each facility to, in certain cases, we're going to have to code financially, maybe some implications if we did go back to a pre-K 5. We have Sandra Gorsuch Plummer from Pittsburgh Elementary School, Jason Libby from Woolwich, Jennifer Gross from Dykeable, Ross Berkowitz from Fisher Mitchell. Over here we have Justin Kelleher, our special ed director. Next to him we have Gretchen Brinkler, who's a guidance counselor at Dykeable. Then we have Janice Fry, who's a grade 2 teacher at Dykeable. Joe Cooper, grade 3 teacher at Fisher Mitchell. And Terry Soule, 4th grade teacher at Fisher Mitchell. So I'm just going to open it up to the board first, and see what questions you have. All of you received the backup because the last time we met. And so I think you have the pros and cons of both configurations, and just give you a chance to ask questions.
Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, since it's probably my fault that we have this wonderful group of administrators and teachers here with us tonight, because I asked one.
Yes, you did.
I sure did. Ms. Bose and Mr. Berkowitz gave an eloquent presentation at the previous board meeting. I would really like to hear from the other administrators who are currently functioning within the regular, I call it the regular configuration, the K through 5 and pre-K through 5.
If we can do that, Bill, there's one thing I would interject is Isabel and Noah, I think, both kind of went through the past schools, and please chime in. Because I know for Isabel, it was right in the middle of her elementary career where this was changed, so I think that would be beneficial as well.
I thought you were going to seat them out there with the panel tonight.
So this works. There we go. So I guess, again, Jason Levy, I think for me, the two things I think I've spoken to everyone about, and I would just say to start with, is I just admire the work that Jen and Ross are both doing at their schools currently. I know they're working hard to make the smoothest transition as possible, whether we stay that way or if we make a change. So I just would like to tip my hat to them and everyone else that's involved in that process, and the staff and the teachers, because I'm confident that whatever decision the school board makes, it's going to be in the best interest of the kids, and we're going to be able to do what's best for our students. It is kind of an interesting thing for me, just kind of personally, because I remember, don't quote me on the year, but I remember standing up at the school board meeting, being a fourth grade teacher at that role, and speaking on behalf of switching to a 3-5 and a K-2 model for academic reasons primarily. I was not a parent at the time. I was strictly a young teacher who was eager to do what I thought was best, and I just thought that having all fourth grade teachers in one building and being able to talk curriculum and those structures would be in the best interest, and I do think that is by far a strength of that model, that you have age-wise, kids are grouped in a way that you can set procedures and you can set structures in place to kind of help them through those time periods, and they'll be a lot closer in age. However, I've also, as you know, went over and taught at Woolwich, and am now the principal there, and the primary reason why I am the principal there is that I think the community structure is the only structure I really work in and teaching now that I've seen it in full motion. I think for me the strength is that you have to, for education to really be as successful as it can be, you have to build a strong connection with families. And I think in the structure, sometimes when you're working to build those strong connections, it takes several years for the parents to get the confidence, for them to overcome some of their own fears at school or their own past experiences in school, and to be able to work as a partner with the school. For me, just in the 2 years as principal and the years that I've taught, which, you know, that's one of the greatest strengths we have, is that students and families are involved with us for 8 to 12 years, depending on if they have 1 or 2 children or however many children are there. And I just think that's the strongest thing for me, is to build that relationship with the community, with the families, and I think the more time you have with them, you know, the more opportunity you have to meet them. So I guess that's, you know, like I said, I have complete confidence either way that we're going to do what's best for kids. We have quality people in place and all that, and our staff and administrators to make the best of those situations. But for me personally, it will come down to that community connection, building that community. And I think just the longer you have with families to build that, the higher chance you have of success with it. I think that would be my, if that's what you're looking for, Bill, right now. Okay.
Not to be redundant, but again, it's an awful position to be here and expressing my opinion, and it might not be the same as my colleagues tonight with our very lightly, but I can say kids being able to sit with their siblings at lunch when there's trauma in the family and the home, to working on the relationship between kids who aren't necessarily siblings, but having a fifth grader be able to mentor a first grader. You know, just today, we have a student who is opting out of the MEA testing, a fifth grade student, and I walked into first grade class, and there he is in the middle of 3 other first grade boys doing a math lesson, teaching those students who might not be that interested in math, and they sure wanted to put on a good face for their, you know, fifth grade friend. So I think that those relationships and having great role models on the playground and in the cafeteria and on the bus, you know, it isn't always a good role model, but it is a role model, and it's developed. We develop those relationships over a period of time, and I think that that really, really helps to invigorate our school.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board or either Jason or Sandra? I think while we're at it, maybe we'll hear from, you know, some of the teaching staff. You folks are here for a reason. You must have an opinion. We'd love to hear it. So if you'd like to take the mic and share that with us, we'd certainly appreciate it.
First of all, I want to thank you for inviting us here and letting us certainly share our experiences and our thoughts and opinions. And it means a great deal to have you think of our input. When I look back, this is my 35th year in Bath, and so I've done the K-5 as well as the pre-K to 2. And when we started the thought of reconfiguration way back, it was because of the way the main learning results were set up, and they were set up for pre-K to 2 and then 3 to 5, so that the thought process was to align our programming so that this would give us an opportunity to get the children ready to meet the standards for the main learning results. And some of the other reasons were that between Dyke Newell and Fisher Mitchell, when we were a K-5 school, that there were pockets of classrooms where numbers would be pretty different. You would have maybe some classes that would have 10 or 11 children, and then in another building at the same grade level, you would have 19, or you would have 20. So that was something else that we looked at. And then there was the thought process too of closing the kindergarten center to save money. So when we put all those things together, we thought that reconfiguring was really the best way to go. And I have to tell you at the beginning, I was leery of that because change is hard. But what I found once we were in a pre-K to second grade format, that it really enabled us as grade levels to be able to work together, because we had all the Ks, all the firsts, all the seconds. We were able to collaborate much more frequently rather than just on delayed starts. And we were able to plan units together for the best interest of the children. And we were also finding that in doing that, what we were teaching was consistent in the classroom. So it wasn't as if one classroom was doing one activity or something or unit of study, and somebody was doing something else, but what we were all doing was consistent across the board. And it also lent itself, and I'll speak to an issue that we had last year when we had some students that really had difficulty with number sense and number knowledge. And what it allowed us to do, having 5 second grades, was to take the students that were at different levels and really develop programs that best suited them. So there were 3 second grades out of the 5 that were able to reconfigure our own way we were teaching math that would benefit the children and really ensure their success. And just to be able to have those opportunities, it was I don't even know what to say. I mean, it was so positive to see children feel so successful in acquiring those skills and feeling great about themselves as learners. And the other thing that I noticed was when I had first started teaching in Bath, it was at the kindergarten level, and I had connected with the Elliott Pearson School at Tufts University for quite some time to focus on early childhood development. And what I learned through reaching out to them and working with them was that it is really important when you think about children from pre-K to 2 to think about where they are developmentally and to provide the support and the structure and the programming they need to ensure their own success. And by that, I mean just at the kindergarten and pre-K level, it's really difficult for them to separate from their parents. So that being said, I mean, at 3 to 5, you're ready, you're ready to leave your parents and you're ready to venture out and take those opportunities. But what we're teaching at the pre-K to K level is, second grade level, is to be able to separate from your parents, to be able to sit down and learn how to focus, how to listen, how to interact appropriately with your peers, how to begin to use your words to share what is concerning you, because that's really hard. How to interact and develop friendships, because once again, that's a really higher level skill. Children don't really understand the dynamics of friendship until they're probably about 9 years old. Up until that point, they like you because you've got a great set of Legos and you've got some great toys at your house. So that's why I would like to come over and play with you. So I think when I think about the opportunities that pre-K and 2 offer, it's just, again, it's focusing on those very early basic skills that they need to learn in order to meet with success before they venture on to grades 3 to 5. Because when you look at it, the best way to put it would be in pre-K to 2, you're learning to read, and you're learning to interact. And when you get to 3 to 5, you're reading to learn, and you know how to interact, and you know how to better problem solve, and it's not as threatening when your population is at a younger level. And I could Thank you very much for having us here. And I've been teaching here a long time, not as long as Janice Fry, but for a long time. And I'm speaking in favor of the K-5, or pre-K to 5. And I think the principals that spoke, I just checked off my points because you said it eloquently. I think it's really important for the children to be with siblings. I think it's important for older children and younger children to be together. That's more like life. We can do a lot of rich collaboration. It's called vertical collaboration. So you can move children back and forth between a team, like a vertical team. That's a possibility. You can do so much as far as mentoring and having an authentic audience. And there's just so many good things that can happen if you're having different age groups together. I also need to speak for the fact that it is a tough transition for a lot of children. I teach third grade, so I'm on the receiving end of that and have been since we've done this. And I don't want that to sound like the only reason, because I think it's so much more than that. But I do see the kids come over. It's for some kids more than others. It's very, very difficult to get used to a whole new set of staff. So we spend months really transitioning over that could be probably spent in other ways. So I do see that, and that has been a frustration. I too feel like whatever we decide to do, we'll make it work. And I also want to reiterate that whatever we decide to do, that we do it well. I think last time it was something that was rushed through in the end, so that left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth. But I think it needs to be done a little differently, and some thought needs to be put into it. But I do feel like that is the best configuration for families in our town. For so many reasons, it's so much easier for them to have everybody at one school, to get used to one school, as folks were saying, over the course of 5 or 6 years. So I think for the folks that I see, it's a better option.
Just before you ask the mic,
Yes.
talk about transition, just could you be a little bit more specific? How is this issue in existence? Is there a problem in transition?
Well, I think you can also think of it another way, that think of other transitions in school. We think of middle school as being not always an easy time for kids. We have a big transition then, everywhere, not just here, except for K-8. I was reading that there's a lot of arguments for K-8 for that reason, that we can get rid of that transition as well. And also, when students are freshmen in high school, that's another huge transition. And in this district, we've given them quite a bit of support, and even, I think, having a position, someone sort of overseeing that transition. So, I don't want to give the impression that I think if we put more time and money into this transition, that it would alleviate it. The kids are very young. We're talking, 8-year-olds, moving to another building, and also for their parents. Their parents really get to know the staff in the building, especially special ed staff, and it's just a huge support system that they develop over the years, and the rug is kind of pulled out from under them. And does that answer your question, Barb?
Yeah, I was just wondering, the kids were anxious.
Yeah.
What is, we all went through a transition.
Right.
So just wondering, what's a descriptor of what problems, I should say problems, what behaviors.
Right. It's very individual. It's like they all react differently. Some are absolutely fine, but they miss their old school. They miss their teachers. It's a big change for them when they come over, and we have a very different kind of setup and culture, and that also takes a while. Yeah.
Steve, I think if I can elaborate just a little bit more, I think what happens with some of the kids is they come over, let's say you have a student at diagonal and they have trouble with emotional regulation, they're just a little bit nervous, and they know principal goes and she's a safe person. And they come and they've been there for 3 years, and it's a safe community. And then they come over to Mitchell and they know me as a principal, but they don't know me. And and so we have to rebuild all the trusts with the kids that were safe, in a safe community. We're like one example, and these are things we're working on. And last year, at the end of beginning of the year, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but at this littlest things like at dismissal, we call walkers what Dyke Newell was calling pickup. Like last year, there were whatever words we were using at the end of the day, like first bus, walkers, pickup people, we were using different words. And when you're in third grade, I mean, it sends everything into chaos because then they start to lose a little trust when we're not using the same language. So, and we're working on all of those things. But it's all the little things like that they get to reteach them, those things.
My name is Terry Soul, and I'd like to thank you all as well for inviting the classroom teachers and staff to speak. I have been teaching for 28 years, and 25 of those years have been at the 3rd through 5th grade level. I began teaching in Bath in 1996, and prior to Bath, I was a 3rd grade teacher at the Reiki School in Portland, Maine. And I've lived in the RSU1 district and attended Bath School since I was in the 5th grade. And I am a Morse High School graduate, and I currently live in Pittsburgh right now. And so I haven't been to a lot of these meetings, so I'm not sure if you already know some of the history of the schools. So I just wanted to go over that. In 1994, the Hughes Kindergarten Center was open, and it remained open until 2006. And it's my understanding that it was a treasure to the community, and that it was a real loss when it was closed. And I believe that it was closed, Janice, you can maybe speak to this a little bit more, that it came down to dollars and cents. They needed to close Hughes schools for budgetary reasons, along with declining enrollments. That was a big piece of it. And at that time, we had 6 of every grade level, 1 through 5. I don't remember how many kindergartens there were. And as a result of the reconfiguration of K2 to 3-5, we went from 6 of every grade level down to 4 or 5 of every grade level. And many positions were lost between classroom teachers, special ed teachers, and ed techs. And so we haven't been a K-5 since pre-1994, so I just want to put that out there. We were a kindergarten center, and then we were 2 1 through 5 schools. So the split came down to Fisher Mitchell had 2 of every grade level, 1 through 5. Fisher Mitchell had 4 of every grade level, and you can easily see by looking at the buildings how that fit real well. That wouldn't be the case this time. We're down to 4 of every grade level, and so I'm having a bit of a challenge imagining what that's going to look like. Are we going to put 2 of every grade level in each of the 2 schools? And if so, I don't see Fisher Mitchell being crowded, but I see the opposite. I see Dyke Newell being underutilized in terms of space. I taught at Dyke Newell, and I believe there are about 23 classrooms in that building. So that is a concern, and I think that it would be nice if we could go back to a couple of neighborhood schools, but I think the enrollment is another factor that, in my opinion, doesn't support that. So I am definitely for staying K2, 3-5. Some of the pros for maintaining a K2, 3-5, in my opinion, are that whole grade levels are together in one building, and we can support common instructional planning, team teaching, analysis of student work on a weekly basis, sometimes daily basis. I know as a 4th grade team, we eat lunch together every day, and much of the conversation has to do with students, not about what we're doing over the weekend. I feel it's going to be a lot easier to balance class size across the grade levels. As a person who went to school in Bath, I can tell you that there was a big division of the city between the north end and the south end. And so by combining to K2, 3-5, you eliminate that division. Definitely class size is a concern. I think students need to be together with a larger peer group earlier than 6th grade. Coordination of grade level activities and trips can be enhanced, and ensure equal opportunity of programming. So those are some of the pros, and I think you can get pros and cons no matter which model you choose, but I just want to end by saying that I too have heard a lot of talk about the difficult transition between 2nd and 3rd grade, and that may be the catalyst for wanting to reconfigure. And I do agree that there are some issues, but we are in the process of developing ways to make that a smoother transition. And I want to say that we do have a clientele with some pretty serious social emotional needs, and they seem to be getting greater every year. And so I think if we looked at things like adding another social worker, adding another guidance counselor, who can work in collaboration with the classroom teacher, team teaching things like self-regulation, problem solving, self-care, sleep hygiene, exercise. I think there's some ways that we could make the transition more successful. And then I'd like to see us at Fisher Mitchell continue using restorative practices, which is the work that we started this year, as a foundation for developing more positive relationships with students. And then I think we'd like to take the next step and extend that to developing stronger bonds between school and home. So I think we can do all of those things, but we just need a little more time to accomplish that. But definitely equitable class sizes is a huge piece for me, and understanding how the two buildings would function if we were to go back to the K-5 model, which again was pre-1994.
I'm the school counselor at Dyke Newell. I actually agree with all of the pros that I've heard. I think those are all really valid points that I know you're considering as you think about keeping the model we have. I guess I continue to go back to the really emotionally fragile kids that we see in our district, that we see in Bath especially. I used to work at Pittsburgh School K-5 for 5 years, and then I've been at Dyke Newell for 6. And I don't know if it has a lot to do with the high number of subsidized housing that we have in Bath, but we have a much higher turnover in our schools. I asked the secretary today, we've had 17 kids move into our school just this year and 30 move out. And it's a revolving door of kids that are having constant change in their life. And a lot of transitions that we can't control. And I just see that this is one that we might be able to have an impact on those kids that it's unnecessary for them to give up all those relationships that they've been able to build for those whatever number of years they've been with us. And we work really hard to try to prepare them. I teach all those things in the classes with them every week, and especially 2nd grade in the spring. The teachers and I do as much as we can to emotionally prepare them for the fact that they're moving on to bigger adventures, and we visit and we've tried a lot of things to work together, and I think it's really hard not to even when we talk about continuing it on in the fall so that we can stay connected, you get sort of stuck in your own building and what's going on there, and it's really hard to continue to collaborate together between teachers, between 2 and 3, and the rest of our staff that works together to try to support the kids. But you hear about how much struggle they have when they go, and I think most of it comes down to just, yes, it's a new building and new ways of doing things, but it's the people that they've become secure with all the other chaos they have in their life. That's the constant, and they have to make another huge shift. So that's really the piece of that.
All right, thank you. A lot of the points I'd like to make have already been touched upon, but I'll just go down my list again. In terms of special education, the biggest challenge again is the word transition. Students with emotional challenges, behavioral challenges, and particularly students with autism have a difficult time, regardless of all the measures you put in place. Like Gretchen said, there's been a number of things tried over the years with a new environment, new teachers, new relationships to build. In terms of special ed, I think if we had a pre-K through 5 model, it would give our special ed teachers, our case managers, an opportunity to see kids all the way through to grade 5, build that connection with families, get to know the students, which they can relay that information to their classroom teacher every year. And thinking big picture, as we increase our specialized programming for kids, for example, behavior programming, autism programming, I see the benefits that keeping that in a K through 5 model. For example, right now we have the behavioral support program at Dyke Newell. If we were to add an additional teacher 3 through 5, they'd be at 2 separate buildings. Whereas if they were in a pre-K through 5 model, they could be in one building, collaborate, get to know the kids, and have some continuity there. From a personal experience, last year I was at Fisher Mitchell as a 3rd grade teacher, and it can take months to develop a relationship with a difficult kid. Students with, trust issues, behavior plans that might have worked in one environment don't work in another environment, those types of things. So on a personal level, I'm thinking of a few students in my head right now who I had a tough time with last year, whereas if they were in a pre-K through 5 model, that might be lessened a little bit. So.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Go ahead, Ron.
Sorry, I would just say, I'd like to thank everybody also for what they said, and this is why I have 1 foot. I go to bed with one opinion and wake up with another.
Okay, I've got a question for the staff members. If we were to look at going to the K through 5 situation, how would that impact the staff in terms of transitioning from whatever school you're in now to perhaps a new school? We talk about this word transition and how it impacts the students, and certainly I'd be asking both principals how, if we made the move, how it's going to affect the students as well, that transition. But I want to hear first from the staff, if we were to make the change, how would it impact you folks and your colleagues? How disruptive would that be in terms of moving your classroom to a new building, developing those new relationships? Talk to me a little bit about that, or how much, what you thought about that.
I think, for me personally, I have some questions for the board that really kind of echo what you're asking of us. My first thought is, how much is this reconfiguration going to cost the taxpayers, the community of Bath? And when we think of the last time we went through this process and it was done rather quickly, there weren't enough materials as far as boxes. There wasn't enough tape. Teachers needed to do their own packing, and a lot of materials were lost in the transition between the 2 schools. And so the other piece that left a bad taste in staff members' mouths were just the fact that some people were compensated and other people were not compensated for this whole transition. And so my other question to you is that we have spent, since we've been pre-K to 2nd grade and 3 to 5, the other piece that we've spent a great deal of time putting together are the libraries. So when you think about monies, you have to think about developing 2 really good K-5 libraries. that are going to support the units of study that we have across the board. So I'd like some information on how you're going to do that. And we've also spent a great deal of time and money developing at Dyke Newell two really strong guided reading libraries that we use to teach children how to read. So I would like to know how those libraries are going to be divided as well or built up again. And, well, I know I'm supposed to be answering the question, but I don't have the answer. I'm asking it. I mean, as a taxpayer and a teacher, I want to know, I mean, we've worked so hard to develop what we have. I want to know, how much is this whole thing going to cost, and have you put into your thought process that we are going to need all these materials times 2. Because I feel as a teacher, it would be something that would impact me a great deal not to have the resources that I'm so used to having now to instruct.
Joan, I'm just gonna, you want to take a shot at it?
Well, just speaking for Fisher Mitchell, I can say that we are really crunched for space, and we actually never recovered some of the materials, and especially in 3rd grade, there still is not enough for 2nd grade instruction, or 1st grade instruction, which we have in 3rd grade. We don't have enough of those materials, and we don't have a place to put those. Like Dyke Newell has a room dedicated for those materials, which is wonderful. So I do think it would alleviate perhaps the space problem at Fisher Mitchell, maybe if this was done right. But going back to your question, it wouldn't be a cakewalk for anybody. I will be honest, it will be a lot of work, and we've spent years sort of building up teams. There are a lot of people that are very happy with it and work very well with their team. And I think it would be difficult for them to have that change. I can definitely see that. But I also think that that sometimes it's hard to plan when I found it hard to plan when there's so many classes. If there's 8, if I'm planning a field trip, I have to consider 80 children rather than, half that amount. So sometimes it's more difficult and things don't happen because of the massive numbers in each grade level. So there is a downside to that too. So yeah, it would affect teachers. It's not going to be easy on anybody. But I guess you have to decide if we're going to look at everything long term or short term, like what is more important as far as the clientele we serve, I guess. And the other thing is, the other thought is for not just teachers, but I would also like to see somehow that we find out what parents think about this that we don't often hear from. I think I spoke to this last time I was at the school board meeting. We talked about this, that I really believe that we have a lot of parents in Bath that we don't hear from for one reason or another. And if there's some way of finding out how they would feel about this. And I think that's important to tap those parents that don't necessarily speak out or come to meetings or make their voices known. We have a lot of those parents. I have concerns about the divisiveness of splitting up the teams. I teach at the 4th grade level, and we're already talking about who's staying, who's going, and what's that going to look like. I can't imagine going to school without my 3 fellow teammates there for me every day. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about developing a new climate and culture in the new school. It takes a long time to establish those relationships, working relationships as well. But I guess my question for you would be, how are you planning, if we go forward, to divide the schools? What will the schools look like. Will they be 2 and 2? Will they be 1 and 3? Or have we not had that conversation yet?
I think at this point in the process, again, as you folks have said, this is something that the board really wants to take their time at. It's something that a discussion that started over a year ago, and tonight is our opportunity to ask you folks questions. So some of the questions you may have for us, it's a little early for us because we're really more interested in hearing from you tonight to help us formulate the direction that we take. Because at the end of the day, as much time as we've taken to discuss this, the board has made it a goal that by the end of this year, we will make a decision. Now, if we decide to make the change, we recognize that it won't be an overnight decision. It could be a 2-year, 3-year, 5-year decision. Or we may make the decision to retain these. But at this point, I can't answer your questions until you answer my questions. So I'm going to turn it over to the other board members.
I did want to speak to your question, Tim, if I could, because
Sure.
your question is one that's run through my mind, and when we were asked to prepare materials for you last time, we really kind of had the hat on thinking about what's best for students and not really worrying so much about ourselves because we're the grown-ups in this situation and we can deal with what we need to deal with. But you know, I am an administrator at school, and so I care for the grown-ups in our building too, and I do worry about what would come with the change. As was mentioned, culture takes quite a while to establish, and I think, I know for our school, I can say that we're in a really good place when it comes to school culture. I think Fisher is doing some great work around that and feels really good about their culture right now too. And so upheaving that and changing that means that we could have some years where that has to settle back down and become reestablished. We may have to redefine how we do things at Dyke Newell School or at Fisher Mitchell School and kind of get that solid again. I think the teacher teams are another piece that I worry about. We have some really solid teams with a lot of trust between the people who collaborate on a daily basis to work with kids. And when that gets shaken up and split up and reconfigured, that can be tricky. And again, that can take some time to settle back down and become really solid again. I went through, not a similar piece, but I went through as a K-8 principal school that withdrew from a district. And so even though we didn't really change what kids were coming to our school or what staff were teaching at our school, we still had to redefine ourselves and come up with who we were now that we were standing on our own instead of being part of the district. And just that piece resulted in a lot of uncertainty and a lot of anxiety on staff, but even on kids, even on students and parents, that withdrawal process and the shakeup that caused. So dividing the kids up, dividing the teachers up, and resorting how we do things would have to be handled really carefully and would definitely cause staff some stress, but I think students and families too. And so that is a concern that I have.
Okay, so board members, Luke, go ahead.
Well, I think what's, obviously everyone's bringing up really great points on both sides. And I guess my question, I guess what the board has to wrestle with is, I think Terry brought up a lot of good things about the numbers. And that's something I think very serious to look at. Because if the numbers are going to be stable or somewhat less, is our goal ultimately that, when Dave finally says, I can't keep the walls of Fisher Mitchell up anymore, and we have to have a new school, what is that time frame? Because if let's just say one scenario you take, so let's go to a pre-K to 5. It's a 3 to 5 year transition. But in 5 more years, are we going to build a new school or a brand new school? I mean, if that's, if our long-term goal is that, because a lot of these, you keep it as it is, do the good work we can do, because ultimately the buildings themselves are we're going to have to get a new school, and based on our numbers, that new school would keep all the teachers together. And the biggest issue would be who's principal and vice principal, because those are the positions that would be lost. But I mean, if that's where we're headed, then is it worth? You know what I'm saying? Is it worth another transition to 5 years and then 5 to 10 year period, they're already moving to the school. I think we have to, that has to be part of the discussion.
I think, Lou, just to quickly answer your question, because you're one of the newer members on the board, from a facility standpoint, and Dave, you can correct me if, I know you are, when we got approval for the bond, part of that, the rationale for that bond was to give us an extended 10-year period of life for Dyke Newell and Fisher Mitchell. The priority was to take care of Morse, and now we've done that with approval from the state. But the work that we've done at Dyke Newell and Fisher Mitchell really were to buy us another 10 years until we decide what we're going to do. Those schools are on the list. I think last time I checked, they were like 53 and 55, but they may have moved up since then.
Right. So I understand that essentially, but I'm still saying in terms of, it doesn't help the students that are there right now, but in terms of a district moving forward in the future and being stable, you got to look at that 10 years.
Right.
So, that's.
Mr. Chairman, as chairman of the Facilities Committee, I think it only appropriate that I introduce Dave Richards, our Facilities Director, because I know he has a great deal to say about this particular issue. Dave?
So set up, Dave.
Just want to try to be efficient. You have the packet from Dave, right? So I don't know if you want to start with questions. I think Dave has done a great job of outlining the, I guess I would say, issues, concerns, and that relate to money. But we've been reluctant to put money into each one of those items just because some of them are a little unknown right now. But hopefully that can be thinking from anything from playgrounds to library, Dean's here with technology, but I mean, with just bathrooms for certain age students so all of those facilities questions. So again, Dave can begin, doesn't need to go down through everything in that report, but also if you have questions that you want to interject, Dave would be happy to respond to those as well.
Just my quick observation is, if we do this, the schools are not going to be apples to apples. If you had two schools identical to Dyke Newell, slam dunk piece of cake. Fisher Mitchell is not set up well at all. Dyke Newell has bathrooms in their kindergarten and first grades, preschools. Those teachers got it made. Kids go to the bathroom, kids have to go to the bathroom. Fisher Mitchell teachers, they got to learn how to line all the kids up, bring them down for a potty break, bring them back. If you did kindergarten and take it over the music room and the art room and put bathrooms in there because there's water and sewer there that you can tap into, that help eliminate some of the problems. But then what do you do with music and art? You put them on a cart, so you're diminishing one program to accommodate another. In my opinion, it won't be as an easy transition for the people at Fisher Mitchell as it is for the people that's going to be at Dyke Newell. Just Dyke Newell's just set up better for that. They have their own gym. Fisher Mitchell, you're going to have to work around K to 5 lunch hours, followed by gym classes to hurry up and get gym classes. Now you do that now with 3 to 5, but it's not the same as K to 2. And then you take the parking lot at Fisher, bring in students in the drop-off area. We made this little imaginary circle that people come in and drive around. Where at Dyke Newell, they could actually get out of the bus area to the parking lot and come in the side door. Pre-K, that's something you have to think about as a drop-off and pick up a pre-K. Parents want to come in. You don't have the room for that over there. So there's going to be a lot of logistics between the two schools. Again, in my eyes, I don't see it as apples to apples. I can build you whatever you want. I've done it 1,000 times for you. It's those little things that's going to be tough on the teachers. And I have to be the guy that tells them no. When they want to, change the room completely around. And, because every teacher is going to want to come and see the new room. And, who's going to pull the names out of the hat and says, you're going here and you're going there. That's you guys. That's great. But they have to come and see me after they do that. And, they're going to want to set up their rooms particular each way. And it's a very tight schedule to change schools around. Fisher Mitchell playground is terrible. has no preschool. Even Dyken's preschool has no preschool playground. Those areas have to be fenced in. The standards that you had back when you guys did it before are not the same as the standards they had recommend for education now. You know, this is just what they're going to have to learn to live with. And the bathroom things, you know, bringing the kids down, constantly use the bathroom or have a bathroom monitor. I don't know, that's something that doesn't work out. It's above my pay grade. Facilities-wise, you know, there's going to be costs. And not just Russ and Josh can do it all. You're going to have movers, providing materials, the whole 9 yards. Someone has to figure out how to do all that, what to do. We're just going to be the grunt work. I don't have a problem with that. It's just some things you got to consider.
Okay, so I just want to keep the board in mind that it's 7 o'clock now. I'd like to spend, you know, maybe another 15, 20 minutes on this issue max. We do have budget stuff to address. So please, you have these folks here. This is an opportunity. If you have questions, now is the time to ask those questions. I turn it back over to the board to ask questions. Megan?
Thank you very much for coming. I feel like I was part of getting a year or two, especially the teachers. I don't know if I really have a question as much that I've been thinking about this a lot because I'm like Ross, where I've lived back and forth, and I also grew up here in Bath, and I went to the neighborhood school, Diagonal, when I was with the 3 elementary schools. So I didn't, you know, let's say my personal feelings towards that, because I had a good, positive experience. So my question is, so I've been asking too, my son is now in 6th grade, so he went to Diagonal and then to Fisher Mitchell, and so I've been asking him and his friends, you know, what would you think if you had gone to Diagonal and it was just K through 5, and all of them are just like, the thought didn't even ever cross their mind. They're like, I was like, so it didn't seem to bother them experiencing that. But back to my question, and I don't even know if you can answer it, but mostly for Janice and for Joan, do your colleagues in 2nd grade, do you feel like they agree more with you? And then your colleagues in 3rd grade, do you think they agree more with you? Or is it split, or is it mixed? Because I feel like those are the 2 grades that are mostly impacted. Not that they aren't all, but.
For 2nd grade, we all agree as a team that we would like to stay pre-K to 2, and to begin the process much earlier on how we can do a better job to help transition from 2nd to 3rd, and do a better job of that, rather than have one-time visit. And it has been hard because Fisher Mitchell has had a lot of transition with administration, so that has been difficult. And
Yeah, my son was the one who had 3 schools, the 3.
Right, right. So, I mean, that consistency was difficult, but I mean, this year we're blessed that we have 2 great administrators that work really well together, and the 2nd grade team has talked a great deal at lunch, hoping that it is something that we can start to talk about earlier on, and think different ways to help them transition from 2nd to 3rd.
Just one example of something that we're talking about at Fisher Mitchell with Ross is looking at our current 4th grade becoming mentors to the 2nd grade, perhaps the last quarter, so that my 4th graders would be 5th graders, and then the 2nd coming into 3rd. You would have that partnership, so I think I agree with Janice that there are ways to work on that transition that maybe we haven't explored yet.
I still think, though, that it's really tough on families who may have children in 2 different schools, or have for families to get used to one school and another. The research I've been reading, there's a lot of different configurations out there, but what I see as a common thread is that transitions are just usually not beneficial for most kids, no matter when they happen. That's at least the reading I've done. So I think we can try a lot of things. Realistically, it's hard when you're in the moment and you're with that class, and because it's a lot of energy. The class you have right now is the one you're really concentrating on. So it's very difficult to think about the next class coming up, especially at the end of the year when you're wrapping up that year with that class. So it's easier said than done, is what it seems to me. Anyway.
I said this last time, too, in my mind, there's an overlay here, which has to do with geography. We're a relatively small district. We only have 1,800 kids in the district. We have three very distinct modalities in a sense. We deliver our education in communities, not based on necessarily on what the test scores show, or anything other than, well, that's what you did. If you live in Village, you're in Cape Boys. If you live in Pittsburgh, you're in a K-5 school. If you're in Bath, you're in K2. I should include the K, both those things, and 3 through 5. There may be teachers in Pittsburgh, the second grade teachers in Pittsburgh, and Woolwich might benefit from that teaming opportunity that you say is so beneficial to your staff. And we don't offer it to them. They don't have the opportunity to benefit from that experience of close teaming. Not because it isn't good for the professional development or there isn't a game, but that's not the way Woolwich operates. And in my mind, if there was movement, if there was choice in the school, parents could say, I don't want my kid to have to do this transition from second to third grade. I think it would be difficult. We know the social, maybe you know the social indicators that suggest that one child is not going to transition well as opposed to another. And we were able to place that child in another building, didn't force them to undergo that transition. That'd be great. That would be the way to, in my mind, I'm being very simplistic. You guys are much smarter about this than I am. But that would be the way for me to justify a pre-K to 2 and a 3 to 4 and pre-K to 8 and a pre-K to 5. You pick and choose. Some teachers will function better in one setting than another. As staff are students now. Some kids will function better in one setting than another. I mean, obviously, it's not as simple as that. But some kids will function better in one setting than another. Let's take kids in that program and offer them that opportunity. But we don't do that. What that forces me, my opinion. Unfortunately, what it forces me is to say that this really isn't a decision of what works or doesn't work, or better or isn't. It's just what do you do? I don't know. To me, that's kind of unfortunate where we are. I don't know what factors are going to deal with those who bring us to the decision. Money will be an issue. You can't look at it. I don't think you can look at the performance of one building over another because there's so many different factors in play. Community strengths that you pick up in Woolwich are very important. Everyone talks about the need of a strong presence in the school, make the school work really well to engage the parents. At least I can't understand the clear advantage of being able to work with that same group of parents over a long, sustained period of time, sort of bringing into the education of their kids. And something we don't get in that school. Strengthen the math schools, professionals working together in a very close, tight-knit way is definitely a strong plus. There is one thing that's going to weigh this one way or the other. I'd like to see, I'd like to see real choice among these schools. Let parents pick and choose among the different educational settings that we offer. Maybe you're aware, I'm not certain where within one district we offer so many different settings. Is that wrong? That's very wrong. I mean, I've only been in Maine for 10 years, and where I came from, we didn't see educated. You decided how you're going to address your school or configure your school's education space, and that's the way we did it. Here we have mix and match, great with parents and professionals, teachers who mix and match too, and find which setting they're comfortable with, parents can find which setting their kids are.
Isabel?
So I'm currently a senior at North High School, and looking back, I realized that North is the school I've been in the longest. Elementary school was I started at school, and then I went on to Lakeville School for first and second grade, and that was the year that they started to transition to the K2 high school. So I went on to the high school after that. So I remember definitely having a good sense of community, just the wide age range in the Lakeville setting. I had a reading buddy, started in first grade, then I was a third grader, and that was the role model that I was really able to look up to. And I remember being able to see my teachers from first grade, like walking around, having that connection, something that I didn't have the same way in the K-5 setting. I personally don't feel like I was really disrupted switching from the K-2 to the 3 to 5 school, but I definitely understand that transition to the child families and can be hard just on students getting to know the teachers and getting to know the administrators and the buildings and where to go. So I think that there are pros and cons to those situations and there are lots of different opinions. But I think that the sense of community, despite the different needs, despite the fact that we don't have all of the grades or all of the classrooms in a certain grade in one school, there's the benefits to just being able to collaborate beyond grade levels, have those role models that you would from and that's really just make it
Thank you. It's 7:15 now. Does the board want to continue? Noah, you had something you wanted to add? Go right ahead. Yeah. Sure.
Just something, try to make it quick, but, well, to start off, I'm personally really torn, so my perspective is going to kind of be from both sides. But I remember distinctly the first time I ever heard that they were going to be making a switch. I was sitting in a classroom, a few of my friends, and when they told us, we kind of looked at each other like, what? I thought I was going to be with that teacher next year. Or my sister had, I have an older sister, and I remember always wanting the teachers she had because it'd be predictable and just kind of like following the path she blazed. But eventually, it's a little bit different because I was kind of startled by it rather than the kids who are currently the model. Like the schooler said, they're used to it. It's kind of second nature to them. But then I also remember going into middle school when the Pittsburgh kids first joined us. I always was very jealous of just the collaboration, and they all knew each other so well. They knew their families. It was just a very different, they kind of had a community, even within the middle school, they're their own community, and even more when it got to high school, all the Woolwich kids, it's just, I had close friends who went to Woolwich, and just the community they have there is unprecedented. I remember going to like a spaghetti dinner or something, and just thinking, I never had this, but wow, I just, I think it's a little bit different because we are talking pre-K through 5 right now, and it's just education equality-wise, it does matter, but I think at this young age, we're talking just the nurturing aspect and getting kids to really enjoy school and having a community sense around them. That's what kind of retains them in school. And it would be interesting to kind of see, it may not be that big of an effect, but just dropout rates compared to kids who had a lot of transition and a lot of not being able to build really strong relationships. And that might be kind of interesting because just seeing how kind of the love for education kids can grow when they have all these opportunities presented by the proposal. Just
Okay. Does the board need any additional time with the panel? This is a one-shot opportunity. No? Any other questions from the board for the panel?
No, it's exactly what we wanted, Bill, and I'm really grateful to all of these professionals for coming out tonight in the cold and the rain. But you've added a great deal to the discussion. I want to thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. So from a board standpoint, I would plan on, at the next board meeting, continuing this discussion within ourselves, amongst ourselves, and plan on voting on this issue at the next board meeting. You have been provided a lot of opportunities here. The one thing that I would just emphasize is a theme that continues to come up again and again and again from both sides is transition. That while transition, we try to avoid a difficult transition. Transition is a part of life, and the irony is, if we make this change, we're creating a whole host of transitions that we hadn't anticipated. So, as much as transition is a point to do this, it's also a point not to do this. And that it tends to be probably the highest point from all of these folks, the thing that people are most concerned about. So, again, thank you so much for coming this evening. We will now, I'll let you guys float out. Maybe we'll take a 1-minute break, and then we'll get back into the budget. Thank you again. I need you to put your attention to the agenda, please. All right. We're going to move on to item 7.0, committee reports. Item 7.1, the Norris High School building project update. Turn this over to Patrick.
So just a quick update. We met with the Department of Education this month, as well as at a building committee. And as you heard tonight, we do have the appraisals in on the 2 properties, and we will discuss those in executive session, and then begin the negotiation process soon with the City of Bath. A couple of things that came out of those meetings is that the Department of Education is looking at building a high school between 625 students and 650 and 180 vocational students. So that is kind of the first discussion that we've had with them about the number of students that we would build a new high school for. And the state guideline of a recommendation of 185 square feet per student. So again, Jay Pickerton and Joel Austin went up to the last meeting, and we went through who teachers what in the high school and vocational, how many students are in our programs right now, because what the state does not want to see is rooms in a new building that are unoccupied. They'd like to have every classroom or every space occupied 85% of the time. So again, that's a negotiating process as well. Next steps for us is we'll start the negotiation process, and we'll start sending staff, a few staff and building committee members to schools like Wells, South Portland, Bloom, to see some new buildings and maybe bring back some exciting ideas.
Okay, item 7.2, Finance Committee. I'll turn this over to Steve.
Thanks. The Finance Committee met 3 times this month. First 2 weeks we met in lengthy sessions with the administrative team. Got their background and comments on the budget proposal, and then met again as a committee to consider something for early in the month. like to thank Patrick and the administrative team for the work into putting those presentations together. And also to thank Ryan Molly. There will be there's an month to check for the first reading of the budget. So we'll look at the package for the big numbers.
Thank you, Steve. Item 7.3, Facilities Committee. Bill?
Yes, we met once this month, and to be brief, we discussed reconfiguration with the facilities director from the perspective of the difficulties that the superintendent mentioned before, and I think we've talked enough about reconfiguration this evening. We reviewed with Dave all of the repairs that we made in the various schools and the effect that they've had. And we're assured that the roofs aren't leaking, the heating systems are working beautifully, and that it was money well invested, and that things facilities-wise are going very, very well. How's that?
Okay, great. That works. Superintendent's report.
Just a couple items. Just want to let people know that as a district, we're very well represented at the Odyssey of the Minds competitions. In March, we had 9 teams, 4 from Woolwich, 1 from BMS, 2 from Pittsburgh, and 2 from Fisher Mitchell. And 5 of those 9 teams qualified to attend the state competition, which I think is it's in Bitterford on April 2nd. So congratulations and thank you to the parents and volunteers that give time to Odyssey of the Mind. The annual Battle of the Books, which is a wonderful academic competition, will happen this Thursday right here at 6:30. And I invite you all to come. Students and staff put in a great deal of work. It's a lot of fun. Fine Arts Night was held at the beginning of March, and anybody that was there, number one, you saw some amazing student artwork, then you saw some music and bands performances, and then lastly, the one-act play. It was a very impressive evening, and I think that maybe Morse is looking to expand upon that next year in the spring with some more academic celebrations at the same time. And then lastly, you might have seen that one of our students at Morse, Ann Tolan, was recognized as an all-state swimmer in the Portland Press Herald on Sunday, so congratulations to her as well.
Okay, thank you. Next report would be financial report. Deborah, is there anything specific that you needed to address?
No.
Okay, I'm going to pass on that so we can make our way to the budget.
We'll move on to the budget.
Yeah. I'm also going to table board goals for this evening. We focused on that enough. And so we will move on to item 10.2, first reading of the proposed 2017 budget.
But you can grab, actually, you can just take a seat if you want to, front row. I'll just start by saying, before I turn it over to Deb and answer any questions that you might have, but just to let the public know that we started this process in December with a kind of a meeting with the board to talk about priorities. And since January, or December, January, that the administrative team has been meeting consistently, again, to talk about priorities in the district. And then, as Steve August mentioned, March 7th and March 14th is when we present our cost center budgets to the Finance Committee. And we cut to the chase. We came in at an overall increase above 4%. And the Finance Committee charged us with going back and coming in at underneath the 4% increase for the first reading of the budget. So we went back as an administrative team and we reduced our non-labor costs significantly. And right now, we're looking at a 3.51 increase in local contribution and a 3.44 overall increase at this point right now. So to give you an idea for assessments, right now it would be a 12.32 increase for Aroostook, a 3.52 for Bath, a 1.75 for Pittsburgh, and a 3.78 for Woolwich. So the handouts that we give you break down every cost center that you have here tonight, and we can answer any questions that you might have, and I'll let Deb chime in if you have any other comments that she'd like to make.
I think that we just basically open it up to, if you have questions. I did want to point out on the revenue side that we'll be using more in our beginning balance because the state subsidy is being reduced, and that's a reflection on unused bond proceeds from the Woolwich construction project. The state actually comes down, they do a full audit, and they come up with an amount that they have to pull from that state subsidy, and we have it in a different fund. So that's why you see the difference, and it indicates includes 2,000 in debt service fund transfer, and then it's adjusted down to the state subsidy. I think Patrick covered everything. Everything in the middle shows our cost per pupil, our calculation that we use for the town assessments. Rouseck, of course, he mentioned is up 12.32%, but that's basically a reflection that they have 3 additional students, and they see that more than other towns. They really can see a change. So we're at 3.51% local.
And just for the public to know is that when setting priorities as an administrative team, we had a lot of discussion with the finance committee and the board as well. And just to remind you, last year, we were fortunate to be able to have a middle school foreign language position. And we were expanded pre-K to 5 days a week. Those are the only 2 things that we as a ad team were recommending last year that went through. This year, we were right now proposing to add another middle school foreign language teacher so we can expand our offerings at middle school level. STEAM position at Morse, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Math, and also a full-time nurse at our elementary level. And then the other one is a technology integrator primarily for grades 9 through 12. And the Finance Committee had quite a bit of discussion about the technology integration position, about the timing of it. What would the person do? Is it necessary right now? With the Morse High School coming on board with decisions about future technology in the system, how important would this be to get the most bang for our buck when it comes to using technology? So just so the public's aware, that's the labor that's new in this budget. So open it up to questions or comments.
Deborah, I've got one. At the last Finance Committee meeting, the budget we looked at, there seems to be a distinction here between what you're showing as state subsidy and what we showed in during the last discussion. I know you just mentioned the part about getting a deferral or a reassignment of $200,000. Is that coming out of the subsidy? Is that getting assigned someplace else? And it still doesn't match up. It's not we're not showing a difference of exactly $200,000.
It's coming out of the subsidy. What they're required to do, and there were new subsidy sheets that arrived at the office on Friday morning. And that subsidy amount is approximately about $200,000 less than what we were looking at the last Finance Committee meeting. And what that is based upon the unused bond proceeds, the state by law is required to withhold that next debt service payment. That next debt service payment for Woolwich is in August of 2016. So they are required by law to withhold that from the subsidy. We have a separate fund, Woolwich project fund that has a balance for the bond in it, that we will pay that debt service payment from that cash account, So the debt service expense is showing in this budget, but the cash is being withheld from the state, but yet we have the cash in another fund. So that's the reason why we're increasing that balance forward we're increasing that balance forward, 300,000, 200 of which is that whole situation. And then an additional 100,000 in order to help fund some of these additions.
Okay.
Does that help? It's complicated, but that's the way
It does.
they're required to do it.
But just so I understand, previously we were looking at $9,571,035 of subsidy. If that was reduced by 200,000, it would be 9,371,000, but it's 9,364,000. Is that because of the new subsidy documents that we received on Friday?
Yeah. And there's a little bit of that Woolwich debt, that's local debt, that doesn't fall into this calculation. It's just enough to complicate things a little bit more.
Okay. Steve?
I just want to go to the fund balance issue, just so, again, the public is clear on this. The fund balance that we're reducing to help support operations is not our capital issue.
No.
These are operational dollars that we carry forward year to year.
That's correct.
Essentially will provide a cushion, as we said. I think the finance committee's feeling that works. I think members here who participated in that discussion, that adding the technology integration piece was important this time. So we looked at the fund balance in part as a way to fund that and to keep the tax levy, the efforts locally taxed somewhat in control.
That's correct. We've used the 400,000 for quite a few years, and we feel that we're in a position where we can increase that to 500,000 basically. So next year, when we're looking at this budget, most likely you will see a $500,000 beginning fund balance, not 7, because the 7 would be reduced to 5 because we'd gain 200,000 more in state subsidy because of the forward project.
Okay, any other questions from the board for Deborah regarding this first reading? No?
The technology budget, is that increased because of the new position? Is that why there's such a cut?
Yes.
Steve?
The other piece of the rationale on the technology budget had to do with and I'm not going to get the acronym right again, but our contract is up for the laptop computers, and that needs to be negotiated again this year. And I think the committee felt that it was time to both in terms of planning for the high school and to ensure that once again we secure the right kind of hardware and software in support of our classroom instruction, and that the technology innovator would be very, very instrumental in that process. So that was the add. I think the committee felt that this was a good, sound effort, first effort. It's not etched in stone at this point, obviously. We're able to continue some of the improvements to curriculum that we started to make a few years ago. Adding a foreign language teacher, I think, to support the SNE coordinator is important. And we have heard a great deal of concern around the nursing issue. And adding that additional full-time nurse, we hope will alleviate some of what in essence is the lack of nursing support in our school at certain times during the week. So again, we thought this was a good first shot. I just want to reiterate something Tim had said early on, that possible, would be very helpful to the community and to the board members. If there are things that are concerning the public that they feel are not addressed in the way that
Anyone else from the board? Any specific questions? No? Sure. Patrick?
Just two quick comments. I sent that email to you last week just about the STEAM. Right now we have it as a one FTE, one position. And for numerous reasons, we think we may only need a half-time position. So that could fluctuate a little bit. And so I don't know if you have any questions on that one. As well as just to be clear about the nursing, that probably would, I know it's an administrative decision, but it probably would leave a full-time nurse at Dyke Newell. It would leave and it would leave a nurse at Fisher Mitchell most of the time. And then that nurse, because of proximity, would be spending, right now we have a half day a week at Phippsburg. That person would probably be increased to 1 day a week at Phippsburg, and then be, the rest of the time would be at Fisher Mitchell. So that's what it looks like right now with the amount that we have in there. We're not putting a separate person in Pittsburgh right now based on what we have in this budget. So.
Anyone else from the board? Steve?
Just on the scheme, the recommendation that Patrick made in that email was to reduce not to have a STEAM coordinator, but to reduce the half-time, but he had said because in my mind, that I either do STEAM or you don't. I'm not sure what we get out of half-time, or what we lose by putting half-time person.
In order for you to get down to 3.44%, I was asked to cut over $65,000 from my non-labor requests that I presented to the Finance Committee. And I started thinking about everything that we have to cover. And I actually, I think it was a good solution. When I talked with Eric Barney, he said, maybe we need to start out a little slower. One of the reasons that drove that, more than anything, is even with a little arm twisting on Leslie's behind me here, on the part of guidance, I tried to at least build one section of an AP Chem, get this off the ground, one of the courses that would be new and had some startup costs associated with it. We had 5 students commit to it. And AP classes are not courses that you can build like in the fall when you're dealing with conflicts. Usually they go the other way. They go down. And I couldn't, and it didn't pass the straight face test to hire someone full-time to offer a course with a lot of startup costs for 5 students. So I started thinking about existing staff that we have. We have a chemistry teacher who's willing to go this summer. I don't know how much explanation you want. Who's willing to attend the AP Institute this summer, probably at St. Johnsbury in Vermont, and work on the course audit and get himself ready to teach AP Chemistry without adding staff. I have a physics teacher that's already planning on doing the same thing for physics, so we can offer AP Physics. And with a school the size of Morris, it would make sense to me. The most cost-effective way to get it started is to run those every other year. AP Physics 1 year, AP Chem the next, and you have computer science when you're not doing AP Chem, and you have anatomy and physiology when you're not doing AP Physics. So the students that get involved with the STEAM track that want that endorsement on their diploma when they're done, and guidance will be very aware of what year those courses are offered. The students will still be able to make a choice between AP Chem or Physics or both if they choose. There's a whole list of things that the students can choose from. I think Carolyn went through that, Carolyn Nichols, when she presented to the board maybe 3 months ago, 2 months ago, I'm not sure when it was. startup costs for outfitting the lab, so that another person coming in is going to need their own space because of the double labs. You can't just grab a chem lab during someone's prep. Because in an AP class, I believe 2 of the 4 days there's like double lab periods. So you kind of need your own space. So what I would like to do is offer it as a halftime, advertise it as a halftime position, so we can get this thing off the ground. I have some ideas on how to do that, and the research methods class that gets students prepared to pursue whatever piece of that work that they're most interested in. It's kind of a general beginning class. There's actually an online course that the coordinator will have to oversee, and then there's projects that they'll be working on after school that will be part of it. And in the senior year, there's a course in the fall while they're doing either their major project or internship, and then they assist with the portfolios. It's not a full-time position yet. That's the bottom line. And I think starting off the way we are makes a lot of sense.
Any other questions for Jay? Okay, I have one. So as we move forward with the STEAM program and you're looking to fill this half-time position, because it's a half-time position, do you think that will pose any challenges in terms of finding a capable person who's willing to take on a half-time position?
No.
Okay. Any other questions for Jay? Steve?
I would just be concerned that we'll lose momentum on this. And I think the folks who came to the board 3 months ago gave a very compelling presentation. And I think I sense real enthusiasm on the board for this. As, again, is one way to distinguish the RSU and Morse High School from other schools in the area, other schools in the state, to have a STEAM academy and to offer that as a track for our kids. If we go to halftime, I hope that doesn't mean that this becomes kind of a secondary priority and sort of, we sort of lose sight of it as something that we like to make, that we like to expand in the future. And I guess if we agree with this, I would like to see what the multi-year, the 2 or 3 year horizon looks like. I mean, we're starting with this based on your argument that, as a startup, what we really need is a half-time position. In year 2, it won't be a startup. It's going to be a seasoned program. And where are we going to be then? We're going to hire the other half-time in this position, or like you said, is it just going to be an afterthought?
I did think about that.
I mean, you might not have the answer right tonight. I just want to say that we have to make a decision on these things. What you say? Go ahead.
Well, if you think about what STEAM stands for, science, if we can have existing staff that's flexible with the every other year scenario, the students will have all the choices that we talked about in the original proposal. If you think about technology, we have access to technology in every single classroom, and if a student has that as their particular focus, I have existing staff that can work with the students. See, a lot of those things are going to happen outside of the normal school day because the students that are going to be on this track are already taking everything. So there'll be conflicts with schedule, which is why that initial class is an online class. So if they can't meet during the day, they're working with this academy coordinator after hours. And that's part of the job description, is to be working with students in lab situations and as part of that academy after hours. And so on. The engineering piece I have figured out. I can't get into like personnel stuff for something that's pending, but I do have a plan for that I think is workable. the art piece between the commercial arts program on the BRCTC side and the art teachers that we have. Any concentration of that piece of STEAM and art, we have access to already, and so on. And the math, you know, we go right up through AP calculus.
And I'm confident that we're moving in the right direction, but I think we're doing it in a financially responsible way, because right now, based on student sign-up, based on ticket, I mean, you can hear about flow in a minute, but the numbers of our flow program in the first year, and then what they were in the second year. We've got 8th graders coming up. You know, we're doing the best we can to market this, and as you know, I've been on my radar for 2 years to move in this direction. So I think we're moving in a positive way, and yeah, I'm sure we will have to expand at some point, but at the same time, you know, utilizing existing staff, if we can make that work, financially, that makes a lot of sense, and still offer the same opportunities for our kids.
And if the demand outstrips what we can offer, what a great problem we're going to have. I look forward to that.
Okay, any other questions for Jay? Noah?
This is just a comment for Mr. Pinkerton. I would love to see some sort of student commission formed when talking about all this, because we have gone through the whole kind of like picking classes and kind of what it looks like for students. I'd love to see like more students in on the conversation.
Okay. Anyone else for Jay? All right, thank you very much. On the budget, I had a couple questions for Deborah, and I only printed out the top sheet. Does anybody have a packet to borrow? I know that we made a lot of efforts district-wide to make cuts in the non-labor side of things, but I noticed that there was one particular line item, and I want to say it was had to do equipment supplies. Thank you. So on the equipment supply line, I saw a 21% increase over the previous year, and I'm curious what constituted, what made up that increase when we were looking at cutting, specifically focusing on cutting those areas.
I believe you saw that on page 7, and there was an error on my part to put instructional supplies. Originally it showed the 21%, but what happened, one of the news reporters asked me about it this morning, and I'm like, so I went and looked further, and what happened was books and periodicals I had listed in 16-17 instructional supplies and equipment. It was not listed in 15-16 in that category. It was down in the all other. So there's 93,000 right there that I pulled out of there, putting in all other. So instructional supplies and equipment truly is an increase of 15,780, 3.04. So you should have it. Steve's, I gave him in the package on the front table like that.
All right, and then also with regard to student and staff support, again, we're seeing a 9% increase from the previous year, or 210,000. Can you tell me what that?
That is where the nursing and the technology integrate fall in that cost category.
I think those were my only 2 areas of focus. Thank you, Steve. Noah?
Why was there such a drop in the student staff report, like the guidance section of it for the middle school?
Because our current guidance counselor at Bath Middle School is actually a social worker, so because of the certification, we have to charge him a special ed.
Megan, could you take the mic, please?
I just want to, the nursing thing. So when that nurse will be at Fitchburg, will somebody be covering at Fishman?
I think I would have Ross and Sarah, work together. I mean, right now, the way it would be, is probably would have, I guess, I'll let them work this out, but maybe 2 days a week for a half day, that the person would go down to Pittsburgh, and Fisher Mitchell would not have somebody right now. I mean, if there was an emergency, obviously, somebody from Dyke would come over and that person would come back, but what we have it built in right now is an increase of hours than over what we had last year. Is it perfect? No, but because of the proximity between those two schools, that's what we're looking to do right now, what we have in the budget.
Yeah. I was just concerned that Fisher Mitchell would be left a day without a nurse.
Anyone else? Any other questions from the board on the first reading? And again, just to comment to the public, just so that you understand, under our cost sharing formula, municipalities are charged on a per student basis based on the number of students they send. So as a representative from Arousik, I'll just reiterate what Patrick said, that the reason why that community is seeing potentially seeing a 12% increase is because they're seeing nearly a 10% increase in students that are going to the district. So you're sending a small number of students. It doesn't take too many students to have a significant impact when you're getting charged per student on your overall budget. So just pointing that out to us, folks from Arousik. Okay. Anyone else? It's approaching 8 o'clock. Would somebody like to make a motion to continue the meeting beyond 8 o'clock? Okay. Motion by Bill, second by Steve. Any discussion? All those in favor? So we will continue beyond 8 o'clock. Thank you, Deborah. It's been a fun couple of months. Next item is 10.3 to approve the 2016-2017 school calendar. That was in your packet. This is an action item. Patrick, I don't know if you wanted to say something about this before we made a motion. Judy, would you please? Thank you.
So the calendar you have in front of you is the result of several drafts. As we do every year, we get feedback from administration, from the SEA. I meet and consult with a representative group from the SEA on a draft and take their feedback and take everyone's feedback, and we come up with what you have in front of you. You can see that in August we are starting before Labor Day with 2 PD days for teachers and then 2 student days. So September is pretty much as it always is, not many interruptions. October, the October 9th PD day is a typical day for us because it is typically a statewide PD day. A lot of workshops go on that day. We also have in-house stuff going on. The big difference really is that November 8th PD day. We typically have one in January, but November 8th is presidential election. Most of our schools are used as voting sites, and because of the high volume of people coming and going from schools, Patrick felt that it was best to close. We have done that in the past. It's not unusual. So we felt that rather than have students and staff not come at all, to actually use that as a staff day, then that would be one less day that we'd have students out of school in January. So we do have those 2 fall PD days. December, January, February, those are all actually much the rest of the year is mirrors what we're doing this year and have done for the past handful of years. There are 5 snow days built in.
Jay, why the spring parent teacher earlier? Is it March instead of usually it's right before April, right? Just wondering why it's 2 weeks early.
Trimesters. We're going to trimesters.
Oh, that's big. Okay.
K to 5 only.
K to 5 is going to trimesters.
Yes, they're doing standards-based report cards, and it is a lot more work to give the kind of feedback on those report cards that is warranted when you go to standards-based. And we've been talking about trimesters for a couple of years now, and teachers really felt that it was time to do that.
So how does that? But that's still necessitated. So the middle school is still having their parent-teacher conferences.
Right.
Even though they're still on board.
Right. I do anticipate there could possibly be some movement in the parent-teacher conferences, because one of the things we discovered as well on those March days is it falls in the MEA period. And I know the high school, I think Jay alluded to this, the high school's considering doing their spring conferences a little bit different. So it's possible that we may come back to you early in the fall with a change in the conference schedule. But other than that, it's something that hasn't been decided quite yet.
Any other questions from you, Noah?
Difference in terms of the Career and Technical Education Center at Morris, how many differences and how many times does it days off not line up with other sending schools?
Well, by state law, we can only have 5 dissimilar days, and we have under that at this point. I don't know the exact number, Joel's not here, but we do, the area superintendents meet and compare their calendars, and so we're comfortable with that at this point.
Megan?
I saw that there's no professional development day in January. Was that moved because?
Right, sorry. There is another difference. We put a PD day in May.
Yeah.
And typically, our last PD day of the year is not a district PD day, it's more a school-based PD day, and the principals felt that they could better use that for teachers talking about students for the next year. So they really, it was actually the administrators that proposed that we have that May day.
And then I have one more question too. Is there a reason why pre-K starts later and ends earlier? And does that happen in the
Yes, it's the same schedule for all, but I don't know the history of that, to be honest with you. That was prior to my time. They start a week later and end a week earlier. Patrick, do you?
Maybe that's something to do with
In the fall, but I don't know why they end. They do the fall the week that all the other students are in school. They do the pre-K screening. I'm not sure.
Students are coming and being screened?
Yes, pre-K.
Okay, I had a question about the trimester, and you've answered that, but my question to the board is this something that we need to be sensitive of? Because if we pass this calendar, we're essentially making that change district-wide. I don't know how much we've done as a district to inform parents that we're going to go from quarterly reporting to 3 times a year reporting. And I just want to make sure that we're communicating that well to the community before we say this is how it's going to be, and people say we never heard anything about it.
I don't think we have gotten any parent input on that.
Go ahead, Betty.
So you said just K through 5 are trimesters?
Right.
So 6 through 8 are...
6 through 12 are quarters.
Right, but the 6 through 8 kids are going to be half days the same as the trimester kids for parent conferences?
Well, it's still parent conferences twice a year, regardless of whether it's trimesters or quarters.
Right, but it's just that.
Well, I was just wondering-
It's not going to be at the end of the.
And mostly for kids who go to Woolwich School, so the K through 5 students at Woolwich will have a half day, but the 6th through 8th graders will stay all day?
No, it's, no. Parent-teacher conferences are K to 8 on the 2nd and 3rd of March.
And it's the 31st is a half day
Oh,
as well?
or, yeah, right.
Okay, sorry, I was just trying to...
No, that's all the same. My question was more that.
Could you speak in the microphone?
Sorry, my question was more that since if you're making it trimesters, you moved it back to the 30th versus just before spring break. So if it remains that way for the 6th to 8th, I mean, you're kind of in the, it's not, it's in the middle of something. It's not in the middle of something. So that, I don't know if you've gotten feedback from the teachers on that. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, the feedback
What we usually get when we sit down at the parent-teacher conference, but they won't have results, they won't have grades.
Feedback I've gotten from teachers is that they rarely go over the report cards anyway, and they like having conferences sometimes in the middle so that you can talk about progress. And then in the spring, a lot of schools have student-led conferences, so it's not really about the report cards, it's more about progress, growth.
So are 6th through 8th graders on a standards-based report card as well?
No.
No.
Not yet.
So again, I'm just wondering, and Patrick, maybe you could give me some feedback on this. I think if we're changing the way that we're reporting for students prior to the board approving the schedule, it might be good for us to, one, maybe just get a little more input. I mean, it sounds like it's all for the right reasons, just to hear a little bit more feedback as to why the district is wanting to make this change. But also communicate to parents in the district that we are in fact making this change, and it may have no effect, but I want to get ahead of that before we approve the calendar. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If we wait a month, is that going to impact the approval on this, Patrick?
It's not going to impact, I mean, if you want to wait a month. I've been in other situations where we've gone from quarters to trimesters. I mean, maybe it sounds like a big deal. I have basically said to Judy, work with the teaching staff that we have, see what they think is in the best interest of students. I know I have, 2 kids, and that quarter goes by like this, and I mean, we're talking about student growth, we're talking about student progress and assessment. As a parent, when that was switched for me, it was an easy thing to get used to. Over the next month, I mean, we can get word out. We plan to do that anyway before the end of the school year. We can do that and see if we get any feedback and come back and hopefully approve it at the end of April. But really, it was just something that at the elementary level, with the way that we're assessing kids, it seemed to make more sense for our teaching staff and for parents.
Again, my take on this is it sounds like it's the right thing to do for students. I'm not questioning that. It sounds like a good move, but there have been too many issues in the past that we've kind of been stung because we took an initiative on something without opening it up to at least some kind of public feedback. So if this can wait a month, I think at least for this point, I think that we should table approval of the calendar until we let some folks weigh in or get more information on why we're making that change. Okay, so there's a motion from Alan to table, a second from Lou. Any further discussion on the tabling motion? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, though, I'm really looking at it. Those conferences are only a week earlier, I think, than what we have right now.
Yeah, that doesn't matter. I think the question there.
No, I understand. I totally agree. And
Yeah.
parents,
Right.
the entities who put out their teachers,
Right,
I
yeah.
absolutely agree with that. But based on the calendar, it's just a week. I believe conferences are next week, right? Anyone?
So there's a motion on the table, there's a motion on the floor right now to table the discussion or table the vote on the calendar until next month. All those in favor of that motion, raise your hand. Any opposed? None opposed, so we'll table that until next month.
What kind of information would you like? Because it's really as simple as what I gave you. So in addition to getting the word out to parents,
I think that's, first and foremost, again, communication to the parents is one of the biggest goals in this district, and the fact that they weren't aware of this change. If they don't know about it before we've had an opportunity to vote on it, I'm certain we will hear about it. And it sounds like we're doing it for all the right reasons, and we just need to get the word out to the parents before the board votes on it, not after the fact. So, yeah, maybe a simple one-page notice that goes home, and if they have questions, they call their administrators, and here's the rationale why we've done it. Next year, you'll have a report card that you receive 3 times a year instead of 4 times a year. However you guys want to implement it. Just so that we've given the public the opportunity, the parents the opportunity to recognize this change and understand that it's coming. Okay, thank you. Next item, 10.4. We have 2 proposed Morris High School courses to approve. We'll begin with item 10.4A. This is a STEAM Academy course, Research Methods. Patrick, is there anything that you wanted to say about this? Move to approve. Do you want to take these collectively? Sure. Okay. So, a motion to approve both courses by Bill. Okay. Is there a second? Second by Alan? Go ahead, Dawn.
I was looking part of that discussion. I'm wondering what the difference between the college algebra and trigonometry is from pre-cal. Like why?
So glad you asked. The difference between the classes is that the college algebra and trigonometry course will give students 3 free college credits from SMCC. They won't have to pay for those credits, and they'll be transferable to any college that they would attend. And the criteria to take that class includes a placement exam. So the idea is that some students, it may be a better fit for some students to take this class than some other classes, and they'll be well placed within that class using that placement exam.
Just for like, or postgraduate prep. So it's 2 credits of math to graduate, correct?
In order to graduate from Morris High School, you need 3 credits of math.
All right, so in the current typical run-through model, your senior year, you're either taking pre-cal, cal, stat, something around there, and if you were to go to college or go to another higher ed program, you would then be taking pre-cal or cal. So how would that change college algebra? Like, how would that work? Because it almost seems as if you've already taken it in high school,
why would you need to take it to college?
This is to entice students who normally wouldn't take a math in their senior year to do so, because they can get early college credit. It's probably not won't entice students who already would be on that track to take a math class every year.
So is it, I guess just content-wise, is it like a repeat of recount, just you're getting
It's
credit?
a little bit different. Mrs. Ortiz actually has taught this class at SNCC, and she's one of the teachers that may teach it at Morse, either Mrs. Anyway, so it's a little bit different in terms of the content that it's covering, but I think the biggest hook for us and the reason why I believe it would be a good choice is because it's aspiration building, and it's especially aspiration building for a student who may not see themselves as college material, and it will hopefully give them the confidence that they have succeeded in their first college class while they're a student at Morse. We've seen a huge positive impact from the college writing course that Mr. Igmanson is currently offering, and so our hope is to add an offering in the math department that would do a similar thing.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions from the board? So there's a motion to approve these two courses. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. None opposed? That passes. Okay, item 10.5, we have an out-of-state field trip. This is from Pittsburgh for grades 4 and 5 to visit Boston. This is a sort of a combined trip. Both some of the group will go to see the aquarium, others will be involved in the Freedom Trail. Is there a motion? Move to approve by Steve, second by Bill. Any questions? Comments on this? All those in favor of the motion to approve, raise your hand. None opposed? That passes. Okay, item 10.6, discussion of flow program adjustment. I will turn this over to Patrick.
So I think in your backup, I gave you some information, some rationale of what we wanted to do for next year, and Lawrence Kovacs is here tonight to give you a kind of a handout that will touch on those points again and just speak to it briefly and see if you have any questions. Thank you, Lawrence, for being here.
Hi there. Lisa Packard was here until about 4 minutes ago. She's got 2 little boys at home she needs to go give dinner to, so I apologize. She apologizes she couldn't stay for the meeting. We received, well, we elicited and received a lot of feedback from all stakeholders. We have every year after Flow, we're going to be entering year 3. And after talking to teachers, parents, students, administrators, we made some changes that we thought would improve the experience for everybody. I've listed them. They're really about 5 different bullet points, and I'm just going to go through them. I'll give a brief description. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer what the rationale was for the changes. So first of all, from the get-go, we had combined all students in the district, all 8th grade students. Year 1, we attempted to combine Woolwich students with each of the houses of BMS. It was not very successful. There were a lot of scheduling issues. Year 2, we just threw the whole thing into the mixer and said, let's mix the houses from BMS and Woolwich. The mixing worked well. It was disruptive for the schools and for the kids. Some of the exploratory teachers, in particular music, they felt like they were struggling to have consistent instruction with kids. So we responded by saying, let's have BMS Red House go with BMS Red House, Woolwich will go with Woolwich, and Greenhouse will go with Greenhouse. One of the big objectives of combining all the students was to get the kids to know each other. We found that after the trip, there wasn't that connection. We weren't really following through in a way that it was sort of a standalone experience. Kids would go on a trip, they get to know each other, then they'd be apart for the remainder of the year. And we're addressing that in a later bullet point. The trip so far has been a 5-day trip. We are switching it to a 4-day trip. Kids will leave Tuesday morning, they'll return Friday afternoon. Again, we have to find the balance between quality time out on the trip and the logistics of getting kids going. Monday mornings were pretty rough. Kids showing up after a weekend, sometimes health forms missing, sometimes clothing missing. Having that space before the trip will help a lot on our end. It will also help a lot on Chewonki's end and allow the instructors to prepare better for the kids who are coming, to really give some quality time to looking at health forms and getting to know the kids on paper better and being able to do a higher quality experience by adding that day, taking the day away and giving an extra day of preparation. Prior to this coming year, we hadn't done any follow-up team building activities. That is something that we negotiated with Chewonki. We said, well, you know, we're taking a day of the trip away. Can we put in a couple of team building days where kids can do initiatives? And the days we're designing are for the entire 8th grade population to be mixed and to go to Chewonki once in the fall after all the flow trips are back to sort of keep the experience fresh in their minds and the connection, you know, with the feelings they had, the stuff they learned when they were at Chewonki. So these will happen on Chewonki's site on the campus. And then another one later in the spring, just before the kids transition to Morse. They'll be together all again and do team building initiatives. We received feedback also, the next bullet down. We've had great chaperones. We've been really, really fortunate. Just bad luck this fall. We had a lot of teachers who were very excited to be chaperones, have health issues, and we scrambled, but I don't want to make it sound like we didn't have qualified people out there. We had very qualified people out there. We got the feedback that even though they were qualified, kids didn't necessarily know them very well. And we will endeavor to make sure that kids have adults who they know from the school setting, who they trust, and have a previous connection with as their chaperones on the trip. The last bullet, in the past, kids who chose not to attend the trip were typically doing independent work in the classroom, sometimes mirroring what was going on out on the trip, sometimes catching up on other stuff. I've been in conversation with the faculty at BMS, not yet with the faculty at Woolwich, but we've been starting to design service learning projects that can happen during that week. We want to recognize that being outside for a week is not for every human being. Some kids are going to say, that's not for me, at least sleeping in a tent. So we've talked, I've talked with the Green and Red House teachers about work on some of the, that would happen on some of the land that is right near BMS. We have a trail that's a pretty well-known Whiskey Trail that needs a lot of attention, a lot of opportunities. I won't go into all the different possibilities for work there, but there's a lot we can do right here on the site. Those are the changes.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Lawrence, Steve?
What was the Woolwich participation last summer? It just seemed to me that we reported, at least the first year, there were BMS kids participating in Woolwich as a percentage of the portion of the overall population.
Yeah, that information is on my laptop sitting over there. I don't know if Jason has that on top of his head.
I would say in the comparison in the 2 years, we have, and I don't have the exact percentage memorized, but I would say just kind of to support the changes, one of the significant differences we experienced, we had high turnout the first year. I think I had 4 kids, 3 to 4 kids that did not go in the first year for different reasons. I did find this past year, and it might just be the nature of the group, but I did have more that did not attend based on kind of that idea of not having people with them that they necessarily knew as well, which kind of supports a couple of these bulleted items that Lawrence had already referenced in terms of knowing each other. I would say also, like in the first year, that was kind of one of the core fundamental things for me, was to be able to mix the Woolwich 8th graders with BMS 8th graders. By default, in that first year, it didn't work out. It still, I mean, it ended up kind of being Woolwich one week, and not as many BMS kids that went, and that's just kind of how it was organized, how it ended up falling. What I did learn in that year, though, was that even with kids, my 8th graders that went and only had 1 or 2 BMS kids with them, came back still talking about the same connections that they were able to build even within their own kids. They would say, geez, I've been in school with Bill for 9 years. I didn't know him until this week. So that benefit was still there regardless of whether it was with their own peers or the kids from BMS. And I think, just to echo a little bit what Lawrence has already said also, is I'm very excited and encouraged by the idea of these 2 days that we can mix our kids more strategically in the fall and then again in the spring. Because right now, even if we did it, they had that experience together, it's not really reconnected again anytime between then and when they go to high school. So
I just hope this is an RSU program. I hope it doesn't become an EMS program. Which hold that. And I thought that was sort of the trend. I like the idea of fixing it's artificial, but it's drawing us stitches together.
I would be confident in saying that in these changes, you're actually probably going to see more participation from Woolwich, as far as just kids that are out on the trail. And then I think strategically, with those 2 days built in, to be more deliberate about how we mix those kids with a more specific purpose towards how those relationships might get built moving into the high school. I think that this still has the potential to be a strong RSU1 program. But scheduling-wise, I think you actually have potential for more participation from both schools in these adjustments.
No, I totally concur. I mean, I think one of the biggest hurdles was scheduling. Another huge hurdle was curriculum. We're 2 very different schools. BMS is an expeditionary learning school. There was a lot of effort put into making flow part of an expedition. Woolwich is not an expeditionary learning school. We had some great conversations about connecting what went on in flow to the curriculum, to what happened in school. And I think in many ways, this change will create more flexibility and give teaching teams more autonomy. I think some teaching teams felt a little bit put out. They were sort of told, this is what we're going to do. And we're deciding things by consensus. And this will definitely, I think, create more buy-in from the teachers when they can use the experience in the way that they think is best.
Any other questions for Lawrence or Jason? All right, I really appreciate the fact that, you've taken the time and, looked at this critically. I think these changes are going to move this program even further ahead, and appreciate the fact that, you have taken the time to really look at it and identify where we could make some changes to make it that much better. So I think that's encouraging for the program. And I like the fact that you said there'll be even more kids participating next year. So thanks for coming in. All right. Before we move on to first reading of board policies, I do just want to open the floor up to public comment. If there's anyone here who wanted to speak, certainly come on up. Grab this microphone right here. And I appreciate your patience. It's been a big agenda tonight.
My name is Lisa Gastingay. I'm a citizen in Bath. I'm also a special education teacher and Title I teacher in Pittsburgh Elementary School. And I have taught in the past at the Dyke Middle School. I just would like to urge the board to consider K-5, pre-K-5 for the Bath schools based on the needs of special ed students and their families. We live in a society that has a lot of anxiety, a lot of pressure on families to provide for their children. I have an adult son with Asperger's syndrome, and he went through a school system in Skowhegan where he had 5 transitions throughout his high school years. I mean, throughout his K through high school years. And that, I don't think that was very good for him. And I think a lot of academic ground was lost, a lot of social ground was lost. And I think that if we can allow students to be in a pre-K through 5 setting, that they won't lose as much academic ground and social ground. And I think eventually that will save the district's money because we won't have to put in so much special ed support. So I hope that you will consider that.
Okay, thank you so much. Is there anyone else from the public? All right. We have 4 policies for first reading. You guys up for this? Yeah?
We have comments.
Okay, good. So, all right. So let me begin. First reading, item 10.7A, policy JLCDA, medical marijuana in schools. Questions, comments on this policy? Alan, you can take the mic.
Well, the question I have probably doesn't need an answer. If a student brings his medication to school himself, which is not supposed to happen, then I assume that they're under the same clarification or the same pressures of carrying a non-usable substance on the school grounds. Do we need to add that, or is that just?
This is coming right from
Anyone else on this policy? Noah?
I'm just wondering if the policy is uniform for other more severe drug medications such as like oxycontin or morphine. Is this a similar, like are they handled similarly, or is it, can those, what people would argue more severe drugs be administered by nurses, like school nurses?
Patrick?
This policy is just for medical marijuana. It's, again, when you read through the policy, it's, again, our staff, not administering it. Therefore, that's why we have a policy/procedure in there. So, anything that's we're in charge of use other drugs would be something that would be prescribed on the outset.
Any other questions, comments on this policy? Okay, we'll move on to item 10.7B, policy EBCF, automated external defibrillator. Any questions, comments on this policy? Okay, it says in the policy, RSU1 will offer training to students on performing CPR. Are we doing that across the district? Is that happening? So, but if this becomes a policy, then that will have to happen. I think that's a consideration by having that language in there. Any other questions on this policy? Bill?
I think it needs to go back to the policy committee, and there needs to be more specificity within the context of who administers, when, how. You know, the question that you raised. I'm talking about defibrillators and CPR. We're talking about everybody being taught CPR. And I'm not sure we want to teach that at the pre-K level or at the K level. So that's what I'm talking about, just more specificity as to what grade levels will be implemented.
Any other questions or comments on this policy? Okay, we'll move on to policy GBEB. This is staff conduct with students. Any questions or comments from the board?
I just had a question of whether or not substitutes in the context of this policy are considered staff. Maybe we should specifically know substitutes. Do know volunteers. It's subsumed in the definition of staff.
Anyone else from the board? I had two things that I wanted folks to take a look at on this policy. Item number 5, this is under prohibited conduct in the district. Number 5 is asking a student to keep a secret. You might want to revisit that or redefine what that means, and then maybe get some more input on the plausibility of items 11 and 12. How definitive do we want to be with social media in defining some of these concepts? So maybe the group could just take a look at that. Steve?
Yeah, there was one other thing. Because you include volunteers and staff members, some of the on page 2, we talk about being alone with the students, driving the students home to their location. Dealing with paid staff and school teachers, for example, I can understand how that would be pretty easily. You could define those roles pretty easily. But a volunteer could be a parent, right? Could be best friend's parent, and you just routinely jump in the car with the best friend's parent and go out home. So I don't know whether there's a way to. I agree with you that volunteers need to be covered by this policy, but there are some things that's just not practical for a parent volunteer, for example, which you would appropriately expect a teacher to do. So, it's a language thing. I don't know how to do that. Like visiting a student at home or at another location, that's not official school business. You just happen to be a parent who volunteers in school. Routinely go over and have drinks with other parents. It just gets out there. But it's a lot you don't trust your policy.
in number 6 in prohibited conduct, disclosing personal family, just those two. So if I was to like walk in my classroom and say, how was your weekend? They wouldn't be able to tell me that they visited their nieces out of state or something. Is that, I mean, it wouldn't be relevant to my education. It's still not
Yeah, so I think it would be worthwhile for the policy committee to just look at some of these examples of unacceptable conduct and maybe see how true it would be to enforce these and how broad a definition we're looking at. We really want to go down that road with this policy.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, we'll go back. This is our third time at this one, just to show you how, you know, sensitive this is. I mean, we talked with our SEA, running one of them. We have an attorney that's on our policy group, and so we've wordsmith some of these, taken some out. For example, there was one in there about prohibited about calling a teacher by a nickname. But again, I guess it depends on, you know, when you went to school, if that's acceptable. But we have a couple of prime examples in one of our schools where that's it works. And so we're trying to be sensitive, but at the same time, we're trying to cover the things that are acceptable and unacceptable, so that if we have a personnel matter, we have a leg to stand on. So we'll go back.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and finally, 10.7D, policy JJIBC. This is relations with booster groups. The board on this one?
Just already had this policy with all the booster groups that we have. It's supposed to be like a high school, but I was talking about, you know, PTAs, different groups, that we want to be able to just make a distinction and have some guidelines.
Again, looking at this policy in the second paragraph, it says only those booster groups that have been approved by the board. So I'm assuming at some point, if this policy goes into effect, there will be a list of booster groups that will come before the board. Noah?
If a booster group has a student member, does that disqualify them from being a booster group, like for letter A, if they're present adults rather than students? Like if they were
Maybe add some conditional language there, primarily comprised of adults and not solely comprised of students. Okay. Item 12.0, set next meeting date and location. Right now we're scheduled for April 25th, back here at 6 o'clock. That will also be a public forum for the budget. We do have a public forum specifically to discuss the budget Monday, April 11th. That will be strictly budget. Everybody good with the 25th? Take that as a yes. We're on the 15th. Is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Steve, second by Lou. Further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, thank you. This meeting is